Some betrayals don't begin with angry words. They begin with laughter behind a half-open door. I never imagined that the hardest day of my life wouldn't be the day a doctor mentioned the possibility that I was seriously ill. It would be the day I heard my own son celebrating it. My name is Richard Lawson. I'm 72 years old. Most people in my town know me as the founder of Lawson Construction, a company I built from nothing more than an old pickup truck, a borrowed toolbox, and years of 18-hour workdays. Today, people look at the beautiful office building with my name on it and assume success came easily. They never saw the nights I slept inside unfinished houses because I couldn't afford rent. They never saw my wife, Margaret, working 2 jobs while raising our son because every dollar we had went back into the business. And they certainly never saw the promise we made to each other. Everything we build for Daniel. Daniel was our only child. Our miracle. When Margaret passed away 15 years ago after a long illness, I stood beside her hospital bed holding her hand as she whispered her final request. Take care of our boy no matter what. I promised. And I meant every word. I paid for Daniel's education, his first apartment, his wedding, his business idea that failed within 2 years, his second business, his expensive vacations when he said he needed to clear his mind. Every time he stumbled, I reached out my hand. I never kept score, because that's what fathers do. Or at least, that's what I believed. 3 weeks ago, everything seemed perfectly normal. I woke before sunrise, made myself coffee, fed the birds in the backyard, and read the newspaper exactly as I had for years. Then my phone rang. Mr. Lawson? Yes. This is Dr. Harrison's office. We'd like you to come in today. We'd like to discuss your recent test results. Something in the receptionist's voice made my stomach tighten. Not panic, just concern. By noon, I was sitting in an examination room staring at framed pictures on the wall while waiting for the doctor. The room felt unusually quiet. Even the ticking clock sounded louder than normal. Dr. Harrison entered with a folder tucked beneath his arm. He smiled politely, but not warmly. That smile told me everything. He pulled up a chair instead of standing. Doctors only do that when the conversation matters. Richard, he began gently, one of your scans showed something we need to investigate further. My heartbeat slowed. Not faster. Slower. What kind of something? He hesitated. It could be serious. Those 4 words echoed in my mind. Could be serious. He explained that there was an abnormal shadow. It might be aggressive. It might not. More tests were needed. Nothing was confirmed. But he wanted me to prepare for every possibility, including the possibility that my condition could be terminal. The room suddenly felt smaller. For several seconds I couldn't hear anything else. Margaret's face appeared in my memory. Then Daniel. Then my grandchildren. I wasn't afraid of dying. I'd lived a good life. I was afraid of leaving unfinished conversations, unspoken love, unanswered questions. Dr. Harrison placed a hand on my shoulder. I don't want you to lose hope. We've seen many situations where additional testing changed everything. I nodded, but inside, my world had already shifted. That evening, Daniel insisted on driving me home. Dad, he said with concern in his voice, you shouldn't be alone tonight. His words sounded comforting. His expression looked convincing. He even held my arm while walking me to the car. For a moment, I felt grateful. Maybe I'd raised a compassionate son after all. When we reached my house, he offered to stay for dinner. His wife, Melissa, joined us. She hugged me tightly. We're going to get through this together. I smiled. Thank you. She even wiped away what looked like a tear. Looking back, it may have been the best performance I'd ever seen. We ate quietly. Daniel kept asking if I needed anything. Melissa offered to organize my medications. They talked about spending more time together as a family. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Around 8 o'clock, Melissa said she needed something from the car. Daniel followed her outside. I stayed inside washing dishes. A few minutes later, I realized I'd forgotten my reading glasses in the garage. The garage connected to the driveway through a side door. As I stepped toward it, I heard laughter. Not ordinary laughter. Excited laughter. Curious, I stopped. The voices became clearer. Melissa spoke first. I told you we'd never have to wait long. Daniel laughed. I honestly thought it would take another 10 years. I froze. Another 10 years? Melissa giggled again. Well, looks like life had other plans. Daniel lowered his voice. I know it's terrible to say. He paused. Then both of them laughed. I can't believe $8 million is finally within reach. Every muscle in my body turned cold. $8 million. My estate. My life's work. Melissa whispered. We need to make sure he updates everything before anything changes. Daniel replied. He trusts me completely. More laughter. I almost feel guilty. No, you don't. You're right. I've waited my entire life for this. I couldn't breathe. The words struck harder than any diagnosis ever could. Not because they wanted money. Because they believed I was already gone. To them, I wasn't a father anymore. I was an inheritance. A bank account. A countdown. I leaned against the wall, afraid my legs would give out. Every birthday. Every Christmas. Every family vacation. Every sacrifice. Did any of it matter? Or had they simply been waiting for this moment? Melissa spoke again. We should start looking at beach houses. Daniel chuckled. And finally quit pretending we like his boring investment meetings. They both laughed. I closed my eyes. Not from anger. From heartbreak. There are moments in life when something inside you quietly breaks. No noise. No tears. Just silence. This was one of those moments. I carefully stepped backward before they noticed me. Inside the house, I sat alone in the living room. Their family photo stood on the fireplace. Daniel at age 8, missing his front teeth, holding my hand. I remembered carrying him on my shoulders after Little League games, teaching him to ride a bicycle, helping him with homework late into the night, selling my dream car so he could attend college without debt. Had I spoiled him? Had I mistaken giving for teaching? The front door opened. Daniel walked in wearing the same caring expression. Dad, are you okay? I looked into his eyes. For the first time, I saw a stranger. I forced a weak smile. I'm just tired. You should get some rest. I think you're right. He hugged me. Everything's going to be okay. I hugged him back. But this time, I already knew something he didn't. He thought I was running out of time. He had no idea. His time was about to run out. Not his life. His lies. His expectations. His dream of inheriting everything I'd built. That night, while the house fell silent, I walked into my study and unlocked a small safe hidden behind an old bookshelf. Inside were documents no one, not even Daniel, knew existed. I looked at them for a long moment. Then I picked up the phone. There was only one person I trusted to help me. My name is Richard Lawson, I said when the call was answered. I need to see my attorney first thing tomorrow morning. The hardest part wasn't pretending I was sick. It was pretending I still trusted my own son. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For years, mornings had always brought me peace. I would brew a cup of coffee, sit on my back porch, and watch the first rays of sunlight spread across the garden Margaret had once loved. But that morning, everything looked different. The flowers were still blooming. The birds were still singing. Yet the world felt colder. I kept hearing Daniel's voice in my head. $8 million is finally within reach. Not once had he said, I hope Dad gets better. Not once had Melissa sounded worried. Instead, they had sounded excited. I took a slow sip of coffee and made a decision. I wouldn't confront them. Not yet. Sometimes the truth reveals itself only when people believe you're completely unaware. And that's exactly what I intended to let them believe. The visit to my attorney. At 9 o'clock sharp, I arrived at the office of my attorney, Michael Carter. Michael had been my lawyer and my friend for over 30 years. He greeted me with a warm smile. Richard, you look troubled. I am. After we sat down, I told him everything. Every word I had overheard. Every laugh. Every plan they had made while believing I was dying. Michael didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he slowly removed his glasses. I've handled thousands of estate cases, he said quietly. But this is heartbreaking. I nodded. I don't want revenge out of anger. Michael looked surprised. I want clarity. He leaned forward. What exactly do you want to do? I looked out the office window before answering. I want to know whether my son loves me, or only what I can leave behind. A small test. Michael smiled sadly. I think we can find out. He explained that legally, I could change my estate whenever I wished. No one had a right to know. No one had a right to demand an inheritance. That money was still mine. Every single dollar. I asked him to prepare new documents, but not to file them yet. I want to wait. For what? I want to see how far they'll go. Their new kindness. That evening, Daniel arrived carrying grocery bags. Dad, I thought I'd cooked dinner. I almost laughed. In the last 5 years, my son had never cooked for me once. Now he was making homemade soup. Melissa followed with flowers. We thought the house needed cheering up. They smiled. They laughed. They asked how I was feeling every 10 minutes. If someone had walked into my home that evening, they would have believed I had the world's most caring family. Only I knew the truth. Every smile had a price. Every hug carried an expectation. Every act of kindness was an investment. The phone call. Halfway through dinner, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Excuse me for 1 minute. He stepped onto the patio. The sliding door didn't close completely. I wasn't trying to listen, but his voice carried inside. Yeah, the doctor said it could be soon. A pause. No, he hasn't changed the will yet. Another pause. I'm working on it. Then he laughed quietly. I'll keep you updated. My stomach tightened. Who was he talking to? Why was my will part of the conversation? When he returned, he smiled as though nothing had happened. Just work. I simply nodded. Of course. Memories that hurt. After they left that night, I wandered into the attic. Old boxes lined the walls. Inside one box were dozens of photo albums. There was Daniel at 6 years old, proudly holding a fishing rod nearly taller than he was. There he was graduating from college. There he was dancing with Margaret at his wedding. I ran my fingers over each photograph. Every picture reminded me of a different sacrifice. Margaret and I had skipped vacations, worked weekends, missed anniversaries. Oh, so Daniel could have opportunities we never did. I whispered into the empty attic. Where did I lose you, son? There was no answer. Only silence. An unexpected visitor. 2 days later, someone knocked on my front door. Standing outside was my longtime neighbor, Mrs. Evelyn Brooks. She carried a basket of homemade muffins. I heard you've been feeling under the weather. Word traveled fast in our neighborhood. We sat together in the garden. After a while she asked, Has Daniel been spending more time with you? Quite a bit. She smiled. That's nice. I forced a smile back. Then she hesitated. Richard, can I tell you something? Of course. I wasn't sure whether I should. She looked genuinely uncomfortable. Last week, before anyone knew you were sick, I saw Daniel and Melissa showing a real estate agent your house. I stared at her. They told him it would probably be available soon. For a moment, I couldn't speak. They were already planning to sell the home Margaret and I had built together. The home where our son had taken his first steps. The home filled with 40 years of memories. To them, it was just another property. Another payday. Mrs. Brooks touched my arm gently. I'm sorry. So am I. The quiet investigation. That evening, I called Michael again. I need a favor. What is it? I want to know everything. What do you mean? I want to know whether Daniel has debts, business problems, loans, anything. Michael was silent for a moment. If it's legal information, I'll see what I can find. I appreciate it. 3 days later, he called back. His voice sounded serious. Richard, I found something. What? Quite a lot, actually. Daniel's second business wasn't doing well. It was drowning in debt. Credit cards, business loans, personal guarantees, millions in financial obligations. I closed my eyes. So that's why. Michael finished my sentence. Yes, he doesn't just want your inheritance. He needs it. That single sentence explained everything. The sudden kindness, the fake concern, the endless phone calls. They weren't preparing to lose a father. They were preparing to rescue their own future with my life savings. That night, I stood alone in my study. I unlocked the same hidden safe once more. Inside was Margaret's handwritten letter, the one she had written just weeks before she passed away. I unfolded it carefully. One line caught my attention immediately. A parent's greatest gift isn't money. It's teaching a child to become someone who doesn't need it. I read those words 3 times. Then I folded the letter, placed it back inside the safe, and made my decision. If Daniel wanted to inherit my fortune, he would first have to learn what it truly meant to lose it. Revenge doesn't always arrive with raised voices. Sometimes it arrives in silence, signed with a single signature. The morning after reading Margaret's letter, I felt something I hadn't experienced since overhearing Daniel and Melissa in the driveway. Not happiness. Not relief. Purpose. For days, I had asked myself one question. Where did I go wrong? But now I realized I had been asking the wrong question. The better question was, what can I still do that honors the values Margaret and I believed in? The answer wasn't giving Daniel another chance to take advantage of me. It was making sure everything we had worked for would still do good, even if our own son had forgotten what kindness looked like. A plan no one could see. I arrived at Michael Carter's office carrying a worn leather folder. Inside were decades of financial records, investment papers, and property deeds. Michael looked at me carefully. Have you made your decision? I nodded. I have. He waited. I want every dollar protected. He raised an eyebrow. You mean from lawsuits? I looked him straight in the eye. No. From greed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Michael slowly smiled. I think Margaret would be proud. Hearing her name almost brought tears to my eyes. I hope so. The $8 million. Michael spread several documents across the conference table. Let's review everything. Together, we listed every major asset I owned. My investment portfolio, retirement accounts, rental properties, company shares, savings, cash reserves. When everything was added together, the total came to just over $8 million. $8 million! A number that represented 50 years of hard work. 50 years of missed holidays. 50 years of sacrifice. It had never been about becoming rich. It had been about creating security for my family. Sadly, money could build houses, but it couldn't build character. The new legacy. I don't want this money sitting in one place, I told Michael. What do you have in mind? I smiled for the first time in days. I've been thinking. We spent the next 4 hours creating something completely different from a traditional inheritance. A large portion would establish the Margaret Lawson Scholarship Fund, helping hardworking students whose families couldn't afford college. Another portion would support children's hospitals, especially families struggling with long-term medical care. Some would fund small business grants for honest entrepreneurs trying to build their dreams. I remembered my own beginnings. An old truck, one toolbox, a dream. Someone had once believed in me. Now it was my turn to believe in others. Michael looked at the final draft. This may become your greatest achievement. I quietly replied, I hope it's Margaret's. Playing the part. Meanwhile, Daniel became even more attentive. Every morning, he called. How are you feeling today, Dad? Every afternoon, Melissa stopped by with homemade meals. Every evening, they reminded me not to worry about anything. If only they knew. One afternoon, Daniel offered to organize my financial paperwork. You've always handled everything yourself. I just don't want you stressing. I smiled politely. That's thoughtful. I've already taken care of everything. His smile disappeared for just a fraction of a second. Only someone watching carefully would have noticed. Then it returned. Good. I'm glad, but I had seen it. Disappointment. Not because I was organized, because he hadn't gained access. Another conversation. A few days later, I received another call from Dr. Harrison. Richard, your additional test results are back. My heart skipped. Can you come in tomorrow? His voice sounded calmer than before. Of course. That night I didn't tell Daniel. I wanted to hear the news first. Whatever it was, good or bad. The hospital. The following afternoon I sat across from Dr. Harrison once again. This time, he entered the room smiling. A real smile. Not the careful smile from before. Richard, I have good news. I leaned forward. The additional scans show that the original image was misleading. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means we found no evidence of terminal disease. For several seconds I couldn't speak. I simply looked at him. I'm okay. He nodded warmly. You're going to need routine monitoring. But based on everything we see now, you're not facing what we feared. I covered my face with both hands. Not because I was crying, because I was thanking God. The weight that had sat on my shoulders for weeks suddenly disappeared. When I finally looked up, Dr. Harrison smiled again. I've never been happier to admit I was wrong. Neither had I. One secret kept. Driving home, I realized I had a choice. I could immediately tell Daniel. Or I could wait. After everything I'd overheard, I decided to wait. Not forever. Just long enough to discover who he really was when he still believed I was dying. Because if kindness only appeared when money was involved, then it wasn't kindness at all. The final signature. 3 days later, Michael called. Everything is ready. I met him that afternoon. He placed the completed documents in front of me. Every transfer, every trust, every charitable foundation, every legal protection. Exactly as requested. This is your last chance to change your mind. I picked up the pen. For a moment I thought about Daniel as a little boy, running through sprinklers, laughing on Christmas morning, calling me his hero. Then I remembered another image, standing outside my garage, laughing about my terminal illness, talking about beach houses, waiting for $8 million. My hand became steady. I signed every page, one after another. When the last signature was complete, Michael gathered the documents. It's done. Just like that. The fortune Daniel believed he would inherit no longer belonged where he thought it did. Legally. Quietly. Irreversibly. No announcements. No arguments. No drama. Only ink on paper. Sometimes, the loudest decision in your life makes almost no sound at all. An invitation. That weekend, Daniel called. Dad! Yes! Melissa and I were thinking, why don't we have a family dinner this Friday? Just us. I smiled to myself. Perfect timing. I'd like that. After hanging up, I looked out the window toward Margaret's favorite rose garden. The flowers were blooming beautifully. I think it's almost time, I whispered. The trap wasn't built with lies. It wasn't built with anger. It was built with patience. And on Friday night, everyone would finally discover the truth. Sometimes, the truth doesn't arrive with a shout. It arrives in a sealed envelope placed quietly on the table. Friday evening arrived sooner than I expected. For most of the day, I stayed busy around the house. I trimmed the roses Margaret had planted years ago, polished the old dining table she loved, and carefully took out the good china that we only used for special occasions. Tonight was a special occasion. Not because we were celebrating, because everything was about to change. At exactly 6 o'clock, Daniel and Melissa arrived carrying a basket of fruit and a bottle of sparkling cider. Dad! Daniel said with a bright smile. You look much better. I've had a good week, I replied. Melissa hugged me. We've been praying for you every day. I smiled politely. Thank you. If someone had walked through the front door at that moment, they would have believed we were the happiest family in the neighborhood. Only I knew that behind every smile was an expectation. A perfect performance. Dinner began pleasantly. Melissa complimented the food. Daniel laughed at old family stories. They asked about my health every few minutes. So what did the doctor say? Daniel asked. I'll know more soon, I answered calmly. It wasn't a complete lie. There would indeed be more to say. Just not yet. Daniel nodded, pretending to be concerned. I just want you to focus on getting better. I appreciate that. For a brief moment, I wondered if there was still hope. Maybe guilt had changed him. Maybe I had misunderstood everything. But that hope disappeared only minutes later. The real reason. As dessert was served, Daniel cleared his throat. Dad! There's something we've been meaning to discuss. I looked at him calmly. What is it? He exchanged a quick glance with Melissa. Well, we've been thinking about your future. My future? I asked. Yes. Melissa leaned forward. We don't want you worrying about paperwork. Daniel quickly added, if anything unexpected happens, we just want everything to be organized. There it was, the conversation they had been waiting to have. He continued gently. I was thinking maybe we should review your will, just to make sure everything is updated. His voice sounded caring, but I could hear the urgency underneath. I slowly folded my napkin. I already updated everything. Daniel froze. You did? Yes. Melissa forced a smile. Oh, that's wonderful. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel asked the question I had been expecting. Can we see it? I looked directly into his eyes. Not yet. His smile faded almost completely. An unexpected guest. Just then, the doorbell rang. Daniel frowned. Were you expecting someone? I was. I walked to the front door and welcomed Michael Carter inside. Daniel looked confused. Dad, why is your attorney here? Michael smiled politely. Good evening. Melissa's face turned pale. What is this about? I gestured toward the dining room. Please, everyone sit down. The room suddenly felt very quiet. Even the ticking grandfather clock seemed louder. Michael placed a large envelope on the table. No one spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. Dad, what's going on? I took a deep breath. I've spent my whole life believing that wealth should bring a family together. I looked at Margaret's photograph on the fireplace. But over the past few weeks, I learned something painful. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. What do you mean? I turned back toward him. I overheard a conversation. His face lost all color. Melissa stopped breathing for a moment. I heard everything. The driveway, the laughter, the beach house, the $8 million. Silence. Complete silence. Daniel stared at me as though the floor had disappeared beneath him. Melissa whispered, You heard us. Every word. No more pretending. Daniel stood up quickly. Dad, it wasn't what it sounded like. I raised my hand. Please, don't insult me by lying again. His shoulders dropped. Melissa looked down at the table. I've lived 72 years, I continued. I know the difference between concern and celebration. Nobody answered. I waited. I watched. I gave you every opportunity to tell me the truth. Instead, you became kinder only after believing I was dying. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Dad, I was scared. Were you? I asked quietly. Or were you scared that the money might disappear? He couldn't answer. The envelope opens. Michael slowly opened the envelope. Inside were several legal documents. Daniel leaned forward hopefully. Perhaps he still believed this was about confirming his inheritance. Michael spoke clearly. Mr. Richard Lawson has legally restructured his estate. Daniel smiled nervously. Okay, Michael continued. The previous inheritance plan no longer exists. Daniel's smile disappeared. What? Melissa whispered. What do you mean? Michael calmly placed the documents on the table. The majority of Mr. Lawson's assets have been transferred into charitable trusts, educational scholarships, children's medical programs, and protective foundations. Daniel blinked several times. I don't understand. There has to be a mistake. There isn't. Michael slid the final document across the table. The transfers were completed several days ago. Daniel grabbed the papers with shaking hands. His eyes moved rapidly across the pages. Page after page. Signature after signature. Everything was legal. Everything was final. Everything they had been waiting for was gone. Melissa quietly asked, How much is left? I answered before Michael could. Enough for me to live comfortably, and enough to leave each of you a small personal gift. Daniel looked up. That's it. I nodded. That's it. The lesson. Daniel's voice cracked. You chose strangers over your own family. I looked at him sadly. No. I chose people who still understand gratitude. I stood up slowly. You stopped seeing me as your father. You started seeing me as a bank account. I simply made sure my life's work would reach people who value it. The room remained silent. Daniel looked at Margaret's picture on the wall. Then back at me. For the first time in weeks, there was no confidence in his eyes. Only regret. Or perhaps, regret that he had been caught. I honestly couldn't tell. I walked toward the window and looked out at Margaret's roses swaying gently in the evening breeze. I once promised your mother that I'd always take care of you. I kept that promise. I gave you love. I gave you education. I gave you opportunity. But I cannot give you character. Only you can choose that. Behind me, I heard quiet sobbing. Whether it came from Daniel or Melissa, I didn't turn around. Some lessons cannot be taught with words. They must be lived. People often believe the greatest loss is money. They're wrong. The greatest loss is the trust of someone who loved you without conditions. No one spoke. The dining room, once filled with cheerful conversations and forced smiles, had become painfully quiet. Daniel sat frozen in his chair, the legal papers still trembling in his hands. Melissa stared at the table, unable to meet my eyes. The silence lasted nearly a full minute. Finally, Daniel whispered, Dad, I'm sorry. I looked at him carefully. For years, I had imagined what it would feel like to hear those words. Now that they had finally come, they didn't bring the comfort I expected, because apologies only matter when they come from the heart. And I still didn't know where his was coming from. The biggest surprise. I pulled another envelope from my briefcase. There is one more thing you should know. Daniel looked up. What is it? I smiled gently. I had another appointment with my doctor. His eyes widened. Melissa immediately leaned forward. What did he say? I looked at both of them before answering. The original diagnosis was wrong. Their expressions froze. My additional tests came back completely clear. Daniel blinked. What? I'm not terminally ill. The words echoed through the room. For several seconds, no one moved. No one even seemed to breathe. Finally, Daniel whispered, You're going to be okay? Yes, I am. Instead of relief, I saw something else flash across his face first. Shock, then embarrassment, then shame. He lowered his head. At that moment, he realized something that hurt far more than losing money. He had revealed his true character to a father who wasn't leaving this world after all. A father speaks. I slowly walked over to the fireplace. Margaret's photograph smiled back at me. I picked up the frame. Your mother believed that success wasn't measured by the size of a bank account. I turned toward Daniel. She believed success was measured by the size of your heart. Tears rolled down his face. I know. No, I replied softly. I don't think you did. When your business failed, I helped you. When you lost your first house, I helped you. When you wanted to start over, I helped you. I never asked for anything in return. Daniel covered his face with his hands. I know. But somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing my help as a gift. You started believing it was something you deserved. Those words hit him harder than anything else I had said that night. Melissa finds her voice. For the first time since the conversation began, Melissa spoke. Mr. Lawson, I'm ashamed. I truly am. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I let fear control me. When Daniel's business started collapsing, I became obsessed with money. I convinced myself that everything would be okay if... She couldn't finish the sentence. If I inherited your fortune. I nodded. Thank you for finally telling the truth. She wiped her eyes. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. One final gift. Michael quietly gathered his papers. I'll leave you three alone. After he left, I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a small envelope in front of Daniel. He looked confused. What's this? Open it. Inside was a single key. He frowned. I don't understand. It belongs to the old workshop. His eyes widened. The one behind the construction yard? Yes. I never sold it. Daniel smiled faintly through his tears. I thought it was abandoned. It isn't. I sat down across from him. When I built Lawson Construction, that workshop was where everything started. One truck. One toolbox. One dream. I leaned forward. If you truly want another chance, don't start with my money. Start with your own hands. Build something you're proud of. Earn every dollar. And never expect someone else's life to rescue yours. Daniel held the key tightly. For the first time all evening, he wasn't looking at it because of its value. He was looking at what it represented. A second chance. 6 months later. Half a year passed. Life became quieter. The newspapers published stories about the newly established Margaret Lawson Scholarship Foundation. Students who had never imagined attending college received life-changing letters. Children's hospitals received equipment they desperately needed. Small business owners received grants that allowed them to keep their dreams alive. Every time I visited one of those programs, I felt Margaret beside me. Her kindness was still changing lives. Meanwhile, Daniel disappeared for several months. Not because he was avoiding me, because he was working. One Saturday morning, I drove to the old workshop. The building had been transformed. Fresh paint, new tools, clean windows. Inside, Daniel stood wearing worn work gloves instead of expensive suits. He looked tired, but for the first time in years, he also looked proud. He smiled when he saw me. I've got my first 3 customers. I smiled back. Congratulations. They're small jobs. Every business starts with small jobs. He laughed quietly. I finally understand what you used to tell me. Nothing valuable comes easy. I nodded. No, it doesn't. A new beginning. Over the following year, our relationship slowly began to heal. Not overnight. Trust never returns that quickly. But little by little. Phone calls became conversations. Conversations became visits. Visits became family dinners once again. This time, there were no hidden motives. No discussions about wills. No fake smiles. Just honest moments between a father and a son learning to know each other again. Melissa also changed. She volunteered at one of the children's hospitals, supported by the foundation. She once told me, "Helping people has given me more peace than chasing money ever did." I believed her. People can change, but only after they choose to face the truth. The final reflection. Now, whenever someone asks me what happened to my $8 million, I simply smile. I tell them the money didn't disappear. It found its true purpose. Some of it educates children. Some of it heals families. Some of it gives dreamers a chance to build something from nothing. And the greatest investment of all, it wasn't the money. It was the lesson. Because my son eventually learned something no inheritance could ever teach him. That respect is earned. Trust is priceless. And love should never be measured by the size of a bank account. If you ever find yourself choosing between wealth and character, choose character. Money can build a comfortable life, but only character can build a meaningful one. And in the end, that is the only legacy truly worth leaving. The end.